All right, guys, we are live here, everybody. As usual, Gresham's having some technical difficulties, so he's trying to get on with us. But Dave Maloney is here, Ron Duguay is here, talking about doing his hair at the beach, and the great Kenny Albert. I did a Wikipedia search on you, Kenny, and my computer crashed. All the accomplishments and all the people you've done broadcasting with. There's a list of about 1,000 people you've broadcasted with. So great to have you on board.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm a first-time, long-time caller, long-time viewer. I've been watching you guys last 3 or 4 Thursdays, I guess. And of all those color analysts, Tom, Dave Maloney is the one that I've worked. I was thinking about it this morning. We've probably worked over 800 games together, and that's by far more than any other color analyst I've ever worked with. So, and of course, my favorite partner as well.
And so, can you tell us any stories about any times where Dave snapped and kind of lost his temper up there in the booth? Or
it's usually at the hands of the officials. Dave once in a while does not agree with a call, and it doesn't have to be a call that goes against the Rangers. It could actually be once in a while an official's call against the other team that Dave doesn't agree with. And normally, I would say about 90% of the time after the initial rant, once Dave sees the replay, he says, maybe they were right on this one.
Oh, he will acknowledge that, will he?
He will acknowledge that. And now this year, this past season, he's been down at ice level. And he said on numerous occasions, I can't believe it. I talk to the officials once in a while during stoppages, and some of them are actually nice guys.
Nice. Very good. Very good.
All right. So I have to add to that because I know, Dave, occasionally you've had to replace Joe Micheletti. And because I know Dave, I can tell when he's doing the game that the fire is building inside of him when things aren't going right, especially with the officiating. So, Dave, it's always fun when you do replace Joe. As good as Joe is, it's always fun to have you up there because you're let's nicely say, very passionate.
Yeah.
You can see it in your words and your voice, and it comes out. So it's pretty cool when you get to do that. Do you enjoy doing it when you've done replace Joe?
Yeah, I do. I do like we talked last week when we had Boomer on.
Well, that's the best Dave sounded.
Just got to figure it out.
Yeah. I like the radio, the medium of radio best. But I mean, doing TV is a different look. Like a lot of times, most of the times this year, I've been down at ice level, and that's different. And the way MSG uses that role is a little bit different than the other networks that have people at the sidelines. But I really do. It sure beats working for a living. We all kind of agree at that. But I've been really, as Kenny mentioned, he and I have worked together a long time, and he makes you sound a lot better than you probably are when you're working.
Kenny, is there any sport that you cannot do? Like, have you ever done cricket?
Never did cricket. The one sport back when I was 24, 25 years old, and I would get assigned to different things. One time I had to try and do college wrestling. And, of course, it's not the WWE, WWF that you see on TV all the time. It's the college Olympic wrestling. And I studied. I went out and bought a book, Wrestling for Dummies. I talked to wrestlers and coaches and people who were involved in the sport. And it was at the University of North Carolina. It was the ACC Conference Championship. And fortunately, I had a great analyst with me who had been a wrestler at North Carolina, because I just introduced, here's Tom Laidlaw, 20 years of age, sophomore from Duke with a record of 18-0, going up against Ron Gressner from Good Soil, Saskatchewan, record of 25-0 with 17 pins. And then I shut up and I let this guy took over because I really had no idea what I was watching.
Kenny, with you're known for having so much knowledge about so many things. Is it something that you're just good at retaining when you hear it and see it, or do you actually spend a lot of time studying and working and wanting to know all details, not only about the present but the past?
Probably a little bit of both. Obviously, growing up around sportscasting and then watching you guys play. I was 11 years old in '79. I was going to a lot of those games and spent so much time at the Garden. And I think a lot of it via osmosis, but also, Dave will tell you when we're on the plane, I'm always reading. And as Dave's, first of all, Dave Maloney has read more books novels than all of us combined.
No way.
That's not saying much.
I would put Dave's story in the last year up against us in our whole life. It's incredible how much Dave reads books, newspapers, crossword puzzles. He's even done the New York Times crossword puzzle during commercial breaks of playoff games that we've worked with. But most of the reading that I'm doing is involving the various sports and teams, and I'm always on the iPad. So I enjoy the preparation almost as much as the game. There's nothing like the games, but I really enjoy the preparation aspect as well.
Hey guys, what's that? We got a surprise guest coming on here. We tried to find a name for our show, so we opened it up to our followers for that. So this young lady here, she came up with a name. We'll put her on right now. Leanne, how are you?
Hi, how are you doing? Hi, Ron. Hi, Ron. Hi, Dave.
Hi.
Hi, Kenny. How are you?
How are you?
So Leanne, you get the honors here telling us what the name is of our show now.
In the box.
Inside
Very
the
apropos.
box.
Inside the box.
Yes.
Very apropos. You're all in little
Right.
boxes.
Good.
That's great. Yeah.
Let me ask you, can you think of it as us being in the penalty box?
Absolutely, that as well.
Yeah.
It originated as the penalty box. And then I thought, well, aside from that, look,
Here we are.
you're all in little boxes.
Okay.
Little mini penalty boxes.
Okay. So how are you at drawing? Are you good at drawing?
Yes.
Can you
Why?
draw all of us in the penalty box? Can you do that next for us?
Why not?
Oh, okay.
There you go.
It's good thinking.
Why not?
Yeah, because Tom wants to create a T-shirt with the logo, and then we just move it from there.
Okay.
Make sure Ron's hair is okay.
What's the time frame, guys? How much
Tomorrow. Get that
time?
done tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
And let me ask you, what is your background in hockey?
I've been an avid fan for years. My father took me to my very first hockey game at the Old Garden on 8th Avenue and 51st Street.
Oh, now you're telling your age.
Before the expansion. There were just
back when
a
Dave
handful
was
of teams. And I fell in love with the game, and he and I would go often.
So who would have been your favorite player back then? Like Harry Howell?
Okay, well,
when a woman comes on, Duke's answer.
honestly, before I became
This is my last question.
Before I became a Ranger fan, I was absolutely crazy for the Montreal Canadiens. Who wasn't back in that day? I mean, it was just a fast game, pure hockey. It wasn't brutish. It was just, skating, stick handling, puck, passing, goals. It was a beautiful, thing to watch. And then, as I developed a taste for better teams, I became a Rangers fan.
Great.
And a little bit of your
I even designed a Rangers shirt back in 1992.
A little bit of your background. You worked for a magazine, didn't you?
Yes,
What was the name?
Penthouse,
Penthouse.
No
back
way.
in the 70s.
No, you're messing with me right now, aren't you?
No, Doogie.
There you go. Did you grow up around here? Are you from here?
Yes, I'm from originally Hell's Kitchen, right by the
wow.
garden, the
Right,
original
yeah,
garden.
that's,
Yes.
Right. That's where the Mullen.
That's where the Mullen brothers are from too.
I babysat the Mullen boys.
I have
There you
too.
go. Great.
Kenny's a little bit older than I, and Mr. Mullen was the Zamboni operator at the garden.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Hey, Gress,
So I know them all.
you say
Joey,
you-
Brian,
Listen,
49th Street.
Yeah, Brian was a stick boy. He used to steal all my sticks.
There you go.
Probably
Tommy,
Sal,
Yeah.
very nice family, matter of fact.
Yeah, great
Great.
people.
Very tight.
Well, Leanne, thank you very much for picking the name. So you're our first honorary guest, and we expect that
Thank you.
a drawing will be done by 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Chop, chop.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Leanne.
I'll do it right away.
Yeah.
Dukes was quiet there, and all of a sudden a woman pops up on the screen. Whoa!
Yeah.
Whoa.
Wow.
Hey, I've been trapped in my room for 2 months, all right?
Yeah, there you go.
That was the first woman interaction I've had in a while.
There you go.
Hey, Kenny, you know where I loved when we did football with Kenny, Moose, and Goose, the three is?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We were together for 8 or 9 years with Moose Johnston and Tony Siragusa. They were both champions, Super Bowl champions. And funny story. So just to show what a small world it is, Tom, you referenced all my different partners earlier. So Moose Johnston's son and Dave's son, by total coincidence, were college teammates, lacrosse at the University of Michigan. They actually played together on the lacrosse team. Small. Yeah. But no, they were a lot of fun, and we also tried to find a group activity, like on a Saturday morning. So for football, we get into the town on Friday, and we'll go to practice and talk to some players and coaches, and then we'll have dinner on Friday night, and then Saturday we'll do the same thing in the afternoon when the visiting team gets in at their hotel. But we always had Saturday morning free, and some of the most memorable times I had with them were actually on these Saturday mornings. I just found the DVD during this quarantine, this quiet time when we all have a lot of time to clean and go through some old boxes. I actually went with them and our whole crew, and we went to the NASCAR track in Charlotte. And some of us actually drove the race cars by ourselves. So I was in the passenger seat. I had a professional driver with me and went around like 3 laps at 140 miles per hour. It was one of the craziest things I've ever done. Wow. Having this race car for 3 laps. And I was with those guys. We would do swamp tours, touching alligators in New Orleans, and just try to have some fun in some of the various cities that we visited during the NFL season. By the way, I have a quick Brian Mullen story. After Leanne mentioned the Mullen family, Brian was actually my partner on Rangers radio for a couple of years in between Sal Messina and Dave. And one of the years the Rangers missed the playoffs, it was 2002 or 3, right around that time. I was working with Brian. And the last game of the season was in Montreal. And as Dave knows, in the press dining room in Montreal, they have these unbelievable hot dogs. And they toast the buns. And it's among the best food that we get to eat on the road before a game. And I made the mistake before this Rangers-Canadiens game in Montreal of eating 2 hot dogs right before the game started. So in the middle of the third period, I start feeling my stomach start to churn a little bit and growl. And there were like 7 minutes left in the game. And I'm just keeping my fingers crossed, hoping that there are no whistles, no penalties. Please let this game end. Finally, it gets down to the final seconds of the game. It's the final game of the season for the Rangers. And I just feel my stomach continue to churn. And the nearest men's room is it's down a staircase. Dave knows where it is in Montreal, down a staircase, about 50 to 100 feet from the broadcast booth. The game ended. I threw a commercial. I threw my headset down. I said, Mully, when the commercial ends, just talk until I get back. Just talk. And I was probably gone for about 5 or 7 minutes. And I don't know what Mully talked about, but he held the fort down until I got back.
Hey, Kenny, as players, we all have our favorite cities. As you know, when we go out and be with the guys, do you have your favorite city? I know you mentioned Montreal, but other than Montreal, was there a favorite place for you to go to?
Yeah, there are definitely favorite cities that we get to go to, and Dave would probably agree with a lot of them. Certainly Montreal and Vancouver, a lot of the Canadian cities. Our group, we always have a sushi dinner together, the TV and radio guys and the behind-the-scenes crew in Vancouver at the same restaurant every year. Dave and John Giannone and I always go to have smoked meat for lunch in Montreal. Chicago's always been a favorite city. It's a great sports city. It's one of the nicest hotels we stay in. There's just so much going on there. So, and of course, the warm weather cities as well, when we get to go to Phoenix or Florida or California during the winter months. Another quick story, they're all come back to me, is about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer, we're in Florida, and a bunch of us went out to the tennis courts. And, as you guys know, Dave might have a little bit of a temper during endeavors.
Yeah.
And at one point during this tennis match, he smashed the racket. He threw the racket, and it was bent. But just to show you what a great athlete and competitor Dave is, he actually won the second set playing with the deformed tennis racket.
Yeah. Nice. Dave lost his temper? I can't believe that.
No, it's very hard to believe that with Dave.
Just for a brief moment. He did not lose his temper, amazingly. The first playoff game we ever worked together, when the Rangers in 2006 made it to the playoffs with Jágr and Henrik during his rookie season. And the Rangers were playing the Devils at the old Meadowlands, and we were in a makeshift booth. There were extra TV crews there, I guess. We got kicked out of our normal spot, and we're in sort of this cramped broadcast location. And we never usually keep open waters out near the equipment and the computers, but for some reason there was a water without a cap on it, and I accidentally spilled the water all over Dave's laptop. And I thought he was going to kill me. He remained very calm, and we finished the broadcast, and I was ready to pay for a new laptop the next day, but it actually worked. So there was no big damage, but it was not fun when I saw that water spilling all over Dave's laptop computer.
Well, no, Dave never got excited playing tennis, right, Dave?
No.
Remember that time on Long Island?
Which time? Yeah, no. There's all kinds of tales of Meltdown City when it comes to.
Yeah, the great thing, Tom, you asked about the football crew with Dave and John and Sam and Joe and the guys that work on the crew. We get to do a lot of fun things on the road as well. Whether it's meals, dinners out, some sightseeing. Dave and I once had the opportunity to go inside the White House, the press conference room, which you see on TV every day, especially during this period. But Dave and I have some great pictures of the two of us actually standing up at the podium in the White House press briefing room about 10 or 12 years ago.
Very cool.
Hey, Kenny, what's it like for you when you're out and you happen to run into a group of players, whether it's sports? Do you kind of avoid them? Are you welcome to go in and maybe have a cocktail, or do you sit down and eat with them? Do you avoid that situation with players?
I don't think I've really ever sat down and eaten with a group of players. I know when we're with the Rangers, once in a while we'll happen to go to the same restaurant and we'll see a group of 6 of them, but we'll be off on our own. We as the broadcast group, we normally kind of, it's funny. Everybody has their different groups. The players are always together. Normally you'll bump into the coaches together on the road. All the trainers are together, and we're together as the broadcast group. So obviously you get to know them. We're on the planes with them, the hotels. We're back in our own area when we travel with the team, and there's certainly a respectful, cordial relationship. But we don't really socialize with them, so to speak. But then a lot of them, like Dave and you, Ron, and so many others that become broadcasters after their playing careers, then you become great friends with them, similar to a lot of the guys that I work with in the other sports. So I feel like you get to know them a lot more once they're retired and either working in this business or maybe once they get into coaching or management as well.
Gresh, how you doing?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. How's your quarantine going there?
I'm trying to figure it all out.
What, the computer?
Yeah, it looks good. It looks good today. You're actually, last couple, you've been upside down. And
I can't hear you.
Hey, Gress, what's life been like for you? Because you have a family of kids. Like, you have 4 kids, right? What's it like for you right now during this coronavirus?
Can save a lot of money. My girls can't go shopping. Except for Amazon online. And listen to me, I want to tell you a little story about Dave and myself playing tennis one time out in Long Island.
Good.
And Dave was good tennis player. I was like kind of average, and he always beat me. And one day I was beating him. We're playing in East Atlantic Beach, and I hit a drop shot. It falls over the net, hits the top, hits the ground. Dave misses it, and I turn around and walk back to the line to serve, and I hear plunk. The tennis racket was sticking in the plastic canvas over top of the tennis thing. So I said, Dave, I think it's about time we exit. And he goes, I rented the tennis racket. I go, give it to me. I'll go put it back on the table. Let's get out of here. And that was it. Dave never got excited.
Dave, how about the story you and John Giannone playing golf up in Ottawa one time?
Oh, yeah, when the goose attack.
Yeah.
Goose attack. Yeah. Goose attack.
What'd you do?
Funny, John's like a city kid, right? And I don't know if he's ever, not that I hang around with geese all my life, but he was afraid to go near the thing. So we played, and then it turned out they were nesting. And at one point we had to come back. It was a little 9-hole course to where they were nesting, right? So we come back to the tee box, and John's going, I'm not going there again. I'm not teeing. I said, hell with that. Let's go. We'll go play, right? So I get to the tee box and whack it, and the geese start hissing. it's like they're attacking us. I'm telling you, I don't know if you ever saw The Sopranos. There was an episode where Michael was getting chased by the Russians through the woods, tripping over shit, stuff. I mean, so that was our goose story. But it turns out you get in a lot of trouble in Canada if you ever hit a goose.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's like Winfield at one point. Didn't Dave Winfield get in trouble up there for throwing a ball?
Yeah, hit a goose. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, that was our great goose hunting thing.
So Dave, you got this the temper thing. Is that something that runs in the family? Like, did Don have the temper too?
No, not. I think we all, to a certain degree, just how quickly you get there, right? And my father, I grew up 2 brothers pretty close to me. Don's 2 years younger, and my brother Bob is a year younger. And my father always used to say that my brother Bob, he had a wick that was about a mile long, right? Don's was about, I don't know, 6 inches long, and mine didn't even have a length. So I'm kind of proud to say that I think I've gotten over all that, but there are moments where, you know what, it's still there. So I think it was an important part, for me anyway, it was an important part of competing and stuff. And there are certainly instances now where I kind of grimace and look back and go, oh boy, what in the world were you thinking of? But probably wasn't thinking, and that's probably what happened. So,
Dave, I have to ask you with the no breaking the stick rules for us back when we played, because what was it like back? Because I don't remember you breaking sticks back then. Did you break sticks?
Yeah, well, it got so
Ask
bad.
JD.
I would break my stick and then go to the bench to get a stick, and nobody would hand me their stick. Right? My parents going to break that too. So there's way too many. We could spend way too much time talking about this, but
We got lots of time, Dave.
Well, I'll interject for a second. In 15 years together, I can only remember one argument that Dave and I ever had on the air. That would be a pretty good ratio for a married couple, right? One argument in 15 years.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Hey,
I'll tell you exactly what it was. I feel like we spend so much time together at practices, at the games, morning skate, bus, plane, the whole thing. So a lot of times I can kind of predict what he's going to say on the air, just because we spend so much time talking, and I know how he thinks about the game. And you guys would appreciate this, having played so many games against him and his team. But the only sort of argument we ever got into was right around the time when Clark Gillies was elected into the Hall of Fame. And it came up on the air, and my take at the time, he was a great player, obviously. My take was that he was somewhat borderline. And Dave actually said, no, absolutely, he's a Hall of Famer. I played against him. Those teams would not have won 4 Stanley Cups without Clark Gillies. So that was the only time we ever got into an argument on the air in 15 years.
Hey, would you agree with that? Gresh, Duke, Tommy?
Hall of Famer? Yeah. I think you would. I think you put it well. They would not have won those cups, or it would be a lot harder for them to win the cups if he wasn't there. Yeah.
You think so, Duke?
I would, similar to what Marty McSorley was to Gretzky in Edmonton. Now, would they have won without Marty? Probably, because he had so much skill. But Clarkie's role, especially when he had to go to Philadelphia and Boston, the fighting that he had to do, and the players that he feared, I strongly believe, when you look at you have to look at value, right? You can't just look at numbers. You have to look at value. When you look at his value, absolutely. Would they have won? I don't know if they would have won.
Well, he was a lot better player than Marty McSorley.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I think, maybe that wasn't a good example.
No, but I think
How about Dave Schultz then?
Yeah. Wow.
But don't you think he's a better player than Schultz, Gresh? Gresh can't hear me.
Yeah. So Dave's asking you, Ron, whether you think Schultz or Gillies is better than Schultz as a player.
Well, Gillies is much better, but Schultz was a big part of that team becoming a goon team. That's how they won those 2 cups.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think Gillies
wasn't. I don't think Gillies was a goon. I think Gillies. I played against him as junior for 3 years. He was unbelievable, and he got to the NHL, and he wasn't a 50, 60, 70 goal scorer. But when he was on the ice, your head was swiveling around kind of fast to make sure that he wasn't going to run you over. And I've known him for a long. I've known him, Christ, 50 years almost. So, and he wasn't fun to play against.
You
right.
guys had the pleasure of fighting him.
You.
Yeah.
Why?
Not I.
Listen to me.
Did you, dude?
Dave's probably right. They probably wouldn't have been. They wouldn't have been that good a team, the Islanders, without Nystrom and without Gillies.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
No, Dave's right.
So in today's game, there's who I think is a hell of a player. Is Wilson in Washington.
Yep.
To me, he's a lot like that guy can play. And he is scary tough in an age where you don't see that. It's like Cassian in Edmonton. You just don't see it in a lot of those guys anymore. They can actually frighten you physically, can actually play.
Yep.
You know what, Dave? I didn't realize that until I looked up his weight and size. I didn't realize how big he is. He's 6'4".
Who, Wilson?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's a big boy. I tell you, you get down at ice level, and you see some of these guys now and how they move and the size and different things. I'm telling you, that guy. So might have been the last game in there when they were in town. I was down, and there was a lot of chirping going on between the benches. The Rangers got a couple guys like D'Angelo and Lemieux. You don't mind chirping it up. They're not quite in Gresh's category, but they like to get after the other teams. I'm telling you, that dude Wilson turned and glared at somebody in the bench, and I almost had a heart attack. Oh no, I'm getting out of the way. I'm going to get some peripheral damage here. So,
Yeah.
But for me, that guy can play with Ovechkin, or he can play anywhere. I just think he's really the last of a dying breed.
Dave, would it be a similar look to Ben Wilson looking at you?
Oh, yeah, Ben Wilson. I remember Ben Wilson because I knew him younger. Like I knew him kind of when he was, he came up to. I worked at Bobby's camp or his camp, and he came to the camp a couple summers when he was younger. So whenever I was out there, the eyes would be spinning, right? And it'd be just like, it's okay, big guy, just calm down here. But so I was protecting you, Duke. He was probably getting after you, but I didn't have to fight him.
Yeah. Well, I played against him in juniors also.
Yeah, right.
And so it's funny. Him and I never fought. Him and I paired up one time, and I was waiting. Okay, here we go. And he didn't start swinging. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll take you to Studio 54 tonight.
Now, speaking of Philadelphia and Ben Wilson, I wanted to ask you guys too. When before the Spectrum was knocked down, and remember after they built the new arena in Philly, they kept the Spectrum up for a number of years. The minor league team played there, and Dave and I were with the Rangers on a road trip, which continued in Philly. So we were not coming from home. Normally for a Philly game, we might just drive down the day of the game, but we were there the day before, and the Rangers actually practiced in the Spectrum. This is probably in 2006 or 7. And Dave and I went to the practice, and I'll never forget Dave telling me, as we were walking in, he said, this place still smells the same, it looks the same, and he had this rush of emotions and feelings coming back. And then we went to the locker room. He said, the locker room still smells the same. What was that like going into that building in the late 70s, early 80s?
Well, didn't they used to joke around then when they turned the bus off and it was still shake? Because everybody was so nervous going in there.
Well, you know what it was? I remember this as what was the bridge, the last bridge before going to Philly as we drove up on the bus?
Walt Whitman Bridge.
You go. Everything before that, everyone's playing cars, there's music, there's talking, and all of a sudden you get to the bridge, and all of a sudden everyone realized, oh my God, we're playing. Spectrum's over there, we're playing the Flyers. Everything got quiet, very quiet, and it was like, okay, we're going to war now.
Yeah.
But you know what the funny thing was, though? It was more with the Rangers. When I got traded out to LA and we came back and played in Philly, I remember lined up at a face-off early in the game, and Dave Brown comes up beside me. I'm thinking, oh, geez, here we go. And he leans over and he starts talking to me. Hey, Tommy, how you doing? How you like it out in LA? And I'm thinking, what? I think the hatred for the Rangers was so bad that it made it even worse. I'm sure it was the same for the Islanders and the Devils and all that. But with the Kings, it was like it was nothing. Now, again, it was a meaningless game, like on a Tuesday night or something. But when he started talking to me, I was like, who is this guy? So.
Yeah,
I think that's partial because Philadelphia always wanted to beat New York and can't beat.
Yeah. No, Duke had it right. I remember like the place was dark. The music was loud. It was hard. The uniforms and you had the guy with the sign behind the net. Remember him?
Yeah.
Sign behind the net. The fans are. Oh, I hated it. Still hate it.
Yeah.
Right. How about warm up? Because the glass was so low, the fans lean over the glass in warm up. I couldn't skate near the boards. I'd have to stay in the middle. It was just horrible.
Yeah.
Just like a regular
These
game.
guys, if these kids today would know what it feels like or felt like for us, they'd be happy in today's game. I would love to play in today's game.
It is different. It's different, yeah.
Well, I know you talk to some of the guys, and Kenny and I, we do the chance you start talking about the stories of, well, especially here in Philly, or we played out at the Coliseum this year. The Rangers did, and the vibe in that place was the same as it was when we were playing there. That was just tremendous. The Coliseum, the fans. But sometimes you start telling the stories, right? Like you're talking, dude, where literally, dude could not go around the boards and warm up. And, you tell a young guy, you're talking to these younger guys that they look at you like you've got three heads on. Like, what? That's how you guys had to play. But you know what? It was a different game then, and you did what you had to do, right?
Well, for me, I've said this before. It brought the best out of me because I knew that if I wasn't on my toes playing really fast and ready to play, that you're going to get hurt, right? And you couldn't show any fear. You couldn't show anyone's going to intimidate you, or they're coming at you. They're marking you. If they saw any signs of anyone looking weak, they would come after you. So you had to be ready. I played some of my best hockey in Philadelphia, just being on my toes, and I'm going hard.
Right.
So Kenny, I know you can't tell Kenny any
playoffs,
names. Kenny, you can't tell us any names, probably.
They were
But
going to take a bunch of penalties when you scored some goals.
I missed part of that time. Sorry.
So I'm sure you can't tell us any names, but does anybody you ever worked with you just didn't get along with?
Not really, to be honest. I've been fortunate enough to work with over 200 color analysts in their different sports, and many Hall of Famers and guys that won championships, and a lot of them, maybe 30 or 40 of them, I've only worked 1 or 2 games with. But I always look at myself as sort of the traffic cop. I'm there to do the play-by-play and add some information and stories and statistics and anecdotes, and then the viewers or the listeners really want to hear from you guys, from the former players and coaches. And I'll try to do some research if I'm working with somebody for the first time, some research on their career, just so I can try and bring some of that out of them, have them tell stories about, especially if they had retired recently and played against players or coaches who may have been, might be playing in that game. But, I've been real lucky to work in other sports with guys like Troy Aikman for 3 or 4 games. I worked the Sugar Bowl game with Howie Long and Terry Bradshaw. That was a lot of fun about 12 or 13 years ago. And in hockey, aside from Dave, guys like Joe Micheletti and Pierre McGuire and Eddie Olczyk and Brian Boucher, some of the top guys working now, and did some games with JD back in the day, and Sal Messina for a number of years. So just real lucky to Tim McCarver in baseball. You talk about being on your toes. I felt like when I worked in Tim McCarver, I had to be on my toes more so than with any other color analyst. He was that good. And through the years, I probably worked about 30 or 40 games with him, and we became pretty good friends and somewhat frequent partners maybe around 2008, 9, 10. But when I first worked games with him in the late 90s and early 2000s, and he was doing the World Series every year, and he had played on World Series teams, but I never felt like I had to be on my toes as much as when I worked games with Tim McCarver. And there are a couple of examples from other, not games I worked with him, but the big one they talk about with him, and he's in the Hall of Fame, he was inducted a couple of years ago, when the Yankees lost to Arizona in the 2001 World Series after 9/11, Game 7, and he had this crazy way to be able to first guess and say something before it would happen. And it was that Luis Gonzalez at bat off Rivera when he broke the bat, and it was a bloop over second base. And Tim McCarver actually said it was going to happen before it happened. So stuff like that. But as far as being on your toes, I never felt it as much as when I worked with him. And getting to work some games with I work about 20 mixed games a year on MSG with Walt Clyde Frazier. There's a lot of fun. You also have to be on your toes because you never know what he might reference, something from the 70s or the late 60s. But he's just so much fun to work with. And tomorrow's actually the 50th anniversary of their championship in 1970 when he had the unbelievable game. So getting to work with guys like that, Dave's old hat, 700-800 games together. We pretty much know everything about each other. But when you get to work with some of these other guys for a game or two here and there, it's a lot of fun as well.
Would it be kind of a dream come true to work with Gresh, maybe?
Absolutely. Bring it on. Let's do it.
Have him maybe as a guest color commentator.
You know, we've through the years we've been lucky to have a lot of all you guys on as guests between periods, and that's another fun aspect when any of you guys or some of the old timers or Rod Gilbert or Stefan Matteau come up to the booth and reminisce about some of the old stories for 5 or 10 minutes too.
Very cool.
Hey, Dave, I have to ask you, did you feel anything similar to that? Like when you first got into TV, like for me, when I started working with Al Trodwick, I was nervous as heck because to me it was Al and the Olympics, right? And I was so nervous working with him. Was there anything similar with you?
Well, I'm trying to think. Actually, the first time I ever worked, I actually worked with Kenny's father, Marv. In what was it, 81? We played LA, and then we played St. Louis, and then we lost the Islanders. So on that, I got hurt against the Kings after that big brawl, and so I was in the booth with Marv and Sal Messina. So from that standpoint, radio is just a lot simpler. So along the way, it does make a difference. James, I wasn't so much nervous. So when I did the work for Fox, when I was in the studio when the NHL was on Fox, that whole thing was just that was an awesome experience to see, big time television and how it was all run. But it was interesting. My co-host was James Brown, and James Brown's a wonderful man, a basketball player from Harvard. He's morphed into a lot of different things now for CBS, but he had zero hockey. He had just no exposure to hockey. And Kenny uses the expression well when he says, talking about managing traffic, the traffic flow through a studio or something. But there would be times I'd get on a ramble and look to get out or have somebody, and I'd look over at him, and he was like, I'm not going to be any help here. You're on your own. So, but by and large, I've been really lucky to work with really good people along the way. And as far as Kenny, all the guys that work with Kenny, like I watch him do his football. I actually spent a day in the booth down in Tampa a couple of years ago when they called it a Buck game down there, in baseball. His analysts are always sound good, and I think that's a credit to him. He just does it the right way. Calls the game. He allows you a sense of timing when it's appropriate to come in. So as far as it goes, nerves, Duke, I'm sure there were nerves along the way, but I think when you look at it, for all of us, we all know the game. It's just your ability to talk about it and talk about it comfortably and know that you know what you're talking about.
Funny story about Terry Bradshaw I mentioned earlier. I worked one game with him back in 2007, I think it was, and Howie Long. It was a Sugar Bowl game down in New Orleans. And we were down for a couple of days. We had all kinds of meetings. And somewhere along the way, he had heard me mention that after this game, I had to fly home early the next morning for a Rangers broadcast the next night. And we're in a big production meeting with about 50 people the night before the game. And everybody's talking about their flights and when they're leaving the next day and coordinating rides to the airport. And somebody brought up the fact that I had this early flight because I had to get back. And Terry Bradshaw had filed away somewhere in the back of his mind from a couple of days earlier. He heard me say something about a Ranger game. All of a sudden, in front of like 50 people, and he's quite the showman. You guys have watched him on TV for many years. All of a sudden, and I didn't know him that well. We had spent some time together getting ready for this game, but I wouldn't say we were that close. But all of a sudden, he breaks out sort of in an imitation of my voice. And in front of like 50 people in this meeting, he says, "Saved by Jockerman." So we my knowledge of hockey and the Rangers and kind of bring it up in a fun way during this production meeting.
Very cool.
Hey, Kenny, with all of what you've been through, if you had an opportunity to go back in time at a particular time, what would be that time that was your favorite time within a year period or 2 years? If you had a chance to go back to that era or time, what would that be?
Wow. As far as the time that I actually did live through?
Yes.
Yeah. I spent 2 years in the American Hockey League, and I know you guys, maybe not Tom, did you, no, Ron, I heard you mention you only played a couple of games in the minor leagues, right? It was pretty much like the NHL, but The defensemen of the group all spent time in the AHL. And I was very fortunate in 1990, right out of school, to get hired by the Baltimore Skipjacks. They were the Washington Capitals affiliate at the time. And all I ever wanted to do, my dream through school, high school, college, was hockey on the radio. I had been exposed to a lot of other sports and did some other sports broadcasting, but hockey was really my goal. That was what I wanted to do. So when school was over, sent out a bunch of tapes and letters to minor league teams all over the country. And by really good fortune, got hired by the team down in Baltimore in the summer of 1990. So I packed up the car, all my clothes, everything I wanted to bring down in a little Mazda back in the day, Mazda 626, I think it was, and drove down to Baltimore and rented an apartment and started working in the team office on a Monday in late June. And at that level, as you guys know, you have to do everything. Some marketing, sales, public relations, pick up players at the airport, go wait in the coach's house for the cable guy to show up. All kinds of stuff. I remember a road trip we had. Our longest trip was up to Portland, Maine. It was a 10-hour bus ride from Baltimore. And we played a home game on a Friday, and we had to play in Portland, Maine on a Saturday. This is the only time all year they let the team, they bought plane tickets for the players and coaches. But the bus had to go up there anyway to bring the equipment and to bring the team back after the game. So to save money, they had myself and the two trainers go up on the bus. So it was just the three of us. And we arrived at like 8 or 9 in the morning. It's sunny out already in Portland, Maine. And I'll never forget, Rick Bowness was the head coach. He's now the head coach of the Dallas Stars. He was the head coach of the Maine Mariners. And here's the visiting coach waiting, helping us get all the equipment off the bus, the equipment and the sticks, and helped us bring it into the locker room. But those 2 years, I wouldn't trade in for anything. Sitting on the bus, our assistant coach was Barry Trotz, and Dave knows a lot of the stories. He was my roommate on the road for those 2 years, again, to save money. They had the radio guy and the assistant coach roomed together. Our head coach was a guy named Robbie Laird, who some of you might know.
Sure.
He had played in Fort Wayne in the International League and coached in Fort Wayne. He's a scout with the LA Kings. He won 2 Stanley Cup rings in his job as a scout with LA. And we had the team wasn't very good. We made the playoffs my first year. We actually lost to the Rangers team in Binghamton. And then we didn't make the playoffs the second year. But we had a lot of guys come through there. Joel Quenneville played 40 games on our team in 1991. He was at the end of his career, and Washington traded for him as a depth guy, and he got sent down. So on that bus, for half the season, we had Barry Trotz and Joel Quenneville, who are now 2 of the 4 winningest NHL coaches of all time. We had guys like Tim Taylor, who went on to win Stanley Cups. The goalies were Ovi Kolzig and Byron Defoe. So a number of players. Steve Konowalchuk is now a scout with the Rangers. Keith Jones played with the team briefly after his college season ended. So we had a lot of guys come through there, but just so many great memories. And playing 7 games a year up in Hershey, Pennsylvania, which is our closest rival. We played them 7 times at home and 7 away. And some of the other coaches and a lot of broadcasters came out of that league at that time because that was when the NHL expanded from 21 teams eventually to 31. So there are 7 or 8 play-by-play guys in the NHL now for a long time who were in the American Hockey League at that same time. But I wouldn't trade in those 2 years for anything. Riding the bus up to Utica, Rochester, Binghamton. One of our players, Todd Alushko, who played in the NHL, he actually posted on Twitter recently. He found a VHS tape. We did a couple of TV games a year. And there's an interview that I did with Herb Brooks in 1991 or 92 when he was coaching Utica. You guys all played for him.
Yep.
And I'll never forget, similar to what I said about Tim McCarver earlier, I'll never forget how nervous I was interviewing Herb Brooks. I was 23 or 24 years old. He was about 10 or 11 years removed from the Olympic team and the gold medal, and he couldn't have been nicer. And it was just great seeing that interview on social media recently from this old VHS tape. So those are the 2 years, Ron, that I wouldn't trade in for anything else that I've done.
Kenny, I'm glad I asked you that question. I'm glad you gave us the short version.
I know what you're talking
Well, that's awesome. I love that. I wasn't sure what to expect out of asking you that. I wanted to ask you. I wasn't sure, but that's an awesome answer. So Anyway, Dave, sorry, Tom, I got another question. I got it for Dave.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to bring it back to today's team and the Rangers, because we have a lot of listeners that are wanting to talk about the current players. Dave, who's your favorite favorite interview on the current team?
Oh, favorite interview. Well, I think about that, but I don't want to forget anybody. Mark Stahl. Mark Stahl is a really solid, honest guy. He's been around. Hendrick's a really good guy to talk to too. We don't get him as much on the radio side. So of the younger guys, let's see. Well, they've had such a turnover in the last year or two.
So
right?
Darius Kasparaitis thinks he's the best interview, Dave.
Darius Kasparaitis.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so no, they're all, I mean, I think now most of them are pretty well. Ryan Strome. Strome's a really good interview. Strome's aware. So you like the guys that kind of acknowledge that there was a league before they played.
Yeah.
A lot of the kids come up now and maybe, I don't know if we were the same when we came up. Maybe we were at 18, 19, and 20.
No.
I'd like to think I knew, I knew that Montreal and Toronto and all that were in the league. And those are the guys that I think too, the guys that come up and they actually, it's not so much that they know who you were, but you can talk or they ask questions about the league. And, there's another good guy too, is Brett Howden, right, Kenny? Brett Howden's a really good kid.
I would add Tony D'Angelo as well. He's a really good interview.
He's pretty colorful. He's a lot of stuff you talk about with him that wouldn't make it to the air.
But no, I would agree with all the guys you mentioned.
Yeah.
So guys, what do you think is going to happen here at the league? I heard these rumors about stories like having 24 teams get in some kind of a play down to maybe the teams 9 through 24 have to have some little tournament. Then you get down to your 16 teams and they play the playoffs. Have you guys heard any stories like that?
Well, basically that's what I've heard. I know there were a couple of pretty big conference calls Monday and Tuesday, and it's like a lot of what we're all in, regardless of what industry. It has to do with testing moving forward, and you kind of get to some conclusion where you're not compromising anyone's health because there's so much about this pandemic that nobody really knows. And I do know what I've heard is that whatever they do, they desperately want to figure out a way to have the Rangers in Chicago involved. You get two of the really important markets. And at 24 teams, that gets Chicago in. So whether that's fact or fiction, I don't know. It seems to make a lot of sense. I do think the league on a couple of fronts. So I watched Brian Gumbel's HBO show the other night, and he had Joe Buck, Jim Nance, and Mike Green on, and there wasn't one representative from hockey. And I think the league has to be aware of whatever they do. They've got to stay relevant. They've got to keep the product out there. And I think that's a big part of too, why there's such an urgency to kind of stay and get this season done and move on. Because I really think the whole sports landscape, I don't think anybody knows how it's going to look. But I do think in America, it's important that the NHL does what it has to do or needs to do just to stay relevant.
Yeah, and that's why they want to have that draft early, right?
Right. Just to do the things where people are don't forget, most articles you read, the NHL is an afterthought, if it's mentioned at all. So I think there are a number of things here that really they're urgent to get this thing up and running if they can.
Yeah, and I like the idea of having the draft.
Could be tough though.
What's that, Gresh?
Oh, there's no question, Gresh. I think you said it's going to be tough. There's no question. There's no question.
I mean, you got so many different things. Players that over in Europe now. I hope they get it going because then my mother's prediction came true that hockey should be played year round.
Well, the Swedes have been able to skate, right? They haven't closed down their society. I mean, they've the more vulnerable parts of their society, they've quarantined. They're elderly, and the kids are all going to school. The league's not up and running, so there are some European skating. And but I think the thing is they're going to try, between the 15th and the 20th to start phasing people back. into their communities and go from there.
I mean, I went out for a few drinks last night.
You phase back into community, Gresh?
Hey, Kenny, what's the all-in challenge that you're involved with? Can you share with us what that's all about?
Sure, absolutely. My portion actually ended a couple of days ago. So the all-in challenge was a creation of Michael Rubin, who is a part owner of the Devils and the Philadelphia 76ers. And he's the CEO of Fanatics, the company that makes apparel for sports teams and college teams. So we have a mutual friend who alerted me to this all-in challenge a couple of weeks ago. And basically, there are athletes, celebrities, broadcasters, etc., actors who donated some kind of a package and to raise money, and 100% of the proceeds go to feed the hungry during the pandemic. It's all going to people who need food. And the last time I looked, a couple of days ago, they've raised $30 million so far through this challenge. And I'll tell you about what I donated, and I'll give a couple of examples from others. So I wanted to donate something unique. You know, Dave and I, through the years, have both donated to many, many charities. Once in a while, we'll have access to tickets, and we'll donate 2 tickets to a game and a visit up to the broadcast booth. And we'll have the people come up, and we'll shake hands, and we'll give them a tour, and sometimes they'll sit with us for a period. So we've both done that once or twice a season, normally. And it usually raises, you know, a couple of $100, maybe more, for various charities that we're involved with. So I wanted to do something unique and different. So I felt because I work in 4 different sports at various times of the year, I put a package together where I donated for 2 people to come and sit in the broadcast booth at an NHL game, an NFL game, a baseball game, and a basketball game that I'm working at some point in the future. And it turns out they started the bidding, the folks at the All-In Challenge and Fanatics, they started it at $2,500, and it was open for 2 weeks. And the final number for my donation was $26,000, believe it or not.
Wow.
So there were about, I think it was 26 people who bid on it, and it kept going up. And they raised $26,000. So, Dave, at some point, 2 people are going to be sitting in the booth with us at a game. I don't know when or where. I think the winning bidder was from the Washington, D.C. area, so perhaps at a Capitals game at some point. But a couple of other prominent athletes, Peyton Manning, for example, donated a package where he will come to your hometown, whoever the winning bidder is. He'll play golf with you and your 2 buddies. So you'll have a foursome on the golf course, and then he'll go to dinner with you. And I think it's 20 friends. It's either 10 or 20 friends, and it's all paid for. I think that was $700,000 the last time I looked.
Wow.
Justin Bieber, he donated a package where he'll come and sing at your house. So there have been over 100 donations. I know Rod Gilbert and Brian Leach did one where a couple of fans can come watch a Ranger game with them. The Rangers did one as a team where whoever the winning bidder for this particular package can put a group of friends together and play a game against the 94 team on the Garden Ice. So those are just a couple of examples. But my package, thanks for asking, Ron, raised $26,000.
Yeah, I want to add to Rod's package. Rod's package, and it ends on Monday, which is actually a suite for 16 people. And the bidding right now is up to $13,000. So Rod is still promoting it. And so for those who might be interested, Rod Gilbert, Brian Leach at Madison Square Garden at a Ranger game, the suite will sit 16 people. And of course, if Gresh and I are around, we're going to drop by that suite also, because I know Gresh, he loves to mingle.
Entertain.
Check out, if you go to All-In Challenge on any of the social media sites or on Google, you could take a look at everything, all the different packages that have been offered. But like I said, they've raised over $30 million to this point.
Maybe I'll do something where somebody gets up at 3:30 in the morning with me and goes for a 4:00 march. I think they bid on that. I doubt it. Hey, guys, kind of on that note, one of our followers, Pauline Palovich, works for St. Luke's University Hospital in Fountain Hills, Pennsylvania. Just a big shout out to her and all the nurses that she works with there for all the great work they're doing too. So,
right.
And Dave's daughter-in-law is a nurse, right, Dave, at one of the hospitals?
Yeah, she's at NYU Langone. She's right on the front lines. But there's a lot, there's so many people involved in that part of our community. To the people that deliver the food for the hospitals, the people that clean, and so hats off to all of them.
And I don't know if you guys saw the article the other day. Reg Grant, who's a terrific guy, he was the Rangers' strength and conditioning coach for about 15 or 20 years, up until 2 seasons ago, I think. He's now at Holy Name Hospital in New Jersey. And he went there as their director of rehab about a year ago. And he's been heavily involved with the folks on the front lines there. And if you get a chance, NHL.com, Dan Rosen wrote an article about Reg and all of the great work that he's doing.
Good. Hey, Kenny, I'm sure with all the things you've done in your career, this is probably one of the highlights for you being on the show.
This is right at the top. I've been watching you guys, like I said.
Yeah.
You've been keeping me busy on Thursday afternoons for the last couple of weeks, so it's been an honor to join you guys today, and I'll be watching for all of the upcoming Thursdays as well, for sure.
Good. All right, guys. So I'm sure, like just to wrap it up, we're all thinking about all the first responders and nurses and doctors, and, grocery store workers, and everybody out there doing a great job. So, great job, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Kenny.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Kenny.
See you next week.